Hello everyone and welcome to the latest Handyman in the field. This video we are going to be talking about why saying no has made my business better, and why it can make your business better. You have to understand that there is a right time to say no, and in some cases it will actually make the relationship with the customer better. When I first started, I thought that I needed to say yes to literally every opportunity. Someone said, "Hey, can you do this?" And the answer was yes. There were a few exceptions of things that I didn't feel comfortable doing or things that I knew that I couldn't legally do. So I would say no to those, but I would be able to, essentially hide behind the idea of, well, it's not legal for me to do that. Or when I say legal, I'm talking about permits, or be able to sit there and say, unfortunately, I'm not licensed for that. That's the legality aspect that I'm talking about. But specifically, those were the things that I tried to stay away from. But now, as time has progressed, there's a lot more things that I try to stay away from. And it's more because there's specific reasons why I say no to things. And we're going to go over those. But some of it is it just as simple as you cannot be the everything for everyone. That's not to say that you can't come pretty close. What I've learned is if you can be the one that they call first, obviously you can decide whether or not you're going to do the work. Now, if they call you too many times and you can't perform the work, that's a completely different scenario. They're probably going to start looking elsewhere. But I realize that actually saying no helps my business grow. And what I mean by that is you have to look at it from a larger perspective. Saying no to things that, just a couple of quick examples before I dive into them. Being able to say no to things that you're not as experienced on, or things that are going to require a lot more work involved in it that you don't know how to price correct because you don't have that experience, that's going to be a big deal. Your business can't grow if you're not profitable. You can't be profitable if you're taking on jobs that you don't even know how to estimate properly. So the first thing is you have to know your limits. No one is an expert at everything. I'm sure that some of our customers will think that we are experts at everything, but it's more of we've been around enough to know a little bit of everything. I can fully admit that there's lots of things that I am not an expert on whatsoever. And that said, I want to make sure I go out of my way to inform a customer, hey, this is my thought, but I think it might be better to, get someone else in here to take care of that. Customers always deserve someone who specializes in the work that they're hiring for. If they hire you to do something with their air conditioner and you are not the expert on that air conditioner, you probably shouldn't be working on it. The worst case scenario is that you start working on something, you don't have that level of experience, and then what ends up happening is that the customer you're going to have this negative reaction because you're not going to be able to take care of what needs to get taken care of. And then in addition to that, you're going to be in a scenario where the customer is either, if you go the route of charging the customer for something that you couldn't even accomplish and get completed, that's going to create that friction point with the customer, which you don't want to do. You want to stay away from those as much as possible. The other problem is that if you don't charge them, then you're in a situation where you're taking on work that you're not getting paid for. So you have to learn where to separate it. Great example, I had a customer recently who asked me to take a look at a garage door. The way they described it, the garage door was going up and down, but it got about halfway and then started going back up and it wouldn't go all the way. I did ask a couple of clarifying questions about, can you bypass it by holding down the button that's on the wall? Yes, it does bypass. Okay, so then immediately I realized, well, if it can go down, if you can bypass it, then it might be something to do with the sensors. That was my assumption. I went out there. It turned out it had nothing to do with the sensors. It actually had to do with the cables. The cables were actually unstrung from the drum, and the spring was no longer tensioned. That is something that I don't do. Garage doors are not something, I don't do certain things. I do the electronic aspects of a garage door. I've replaced openers and sensors and things like that, where you go to the store, you get the whole kit. I've replaced those. But as far as the tracks, the actual panels, the the springs, the cables. I don't do any of those things. So the thing is, immediately I spent a very quick amount of time diagnosing what it is, realized that it was something outside of my control. We're able to give them a referral. The types of work that I do not take, or I specifically decline, I've always declined roofing. Roofing is something that, one, you have to be licensed for, but the biggest reason I stopped, or not stopped, but I never even took any roofing work, was specifically because of one specific thing. If you do something incorrectly on a roof, the roof is going to leak. If the roof leaks, you're looking at wood damage, drywall damage, insulation damage. There's so much involved in that one specific thing from a leak. You have a pipe underneath a sink that wasn't completely seated correctly and you didn't get it completely hooked up. That small leak, as long as it's found early enough, you're going to end up with just maybe the bottom of the cabinet that might need to get replaced. It's very unlikely that, unless they were consistently running it, that you're going to end up running enough water that it's going to go through. Hopefully you tested it enough to know that it's not leaking a significant amount. So if it is just a tiny leak, then when it's found, you might have to replace the bottom of the cabinet. That's one thing. Replacing an entire, portion of the house because the damage wasn't found, because how often are people up in their attic looking for damage? That by the time they see it, it's because it's in the ceiling. And when they see it in the ceiling, by then the wood has already been, completely saturated and could be having an issue. So that's something I've never really wanted to take on. I've always said no to that stuff immediately. The other issue is that where I'm at in Illinois, you do need a roofing license. I do not have a roofing license. There are specialty licenses for specialty trades, and I do not have those specialty licenses. So even when someone calls and says, "Oh, I just need something really quick sealed. I just need to get a shingle put back on," that's great. One, I don't even have the equipment to get on, taller houses. My tallest ladder reaches about 22 feet, which won't even get up on a second story house. The tallest I can get up on is like a story and a half. And I don't want to have to be buying a bunch of additional equipment specifically for that. Another thing I don't do is HVAC repairs. There has been times in the past where I have done some HVAC repairs, specifically, replacing certain parts or cleaning out air conditioners, or doing, I've never actually done any capacitor work on air conditioners. I've never done any board work on a furnace. What I have done, however, is I have done maintenance as far as checking the filters, cleaning the furnace, cleaning the air conditioners. I've done that, and I still would do that for certain customers. But for the most part, a lot of companies will combine the normal maintenance with things that I can't do. I don't have the equipment to check Freon levels. I don't have the equipment to check other aspects of the equipment. I have a multimeter and I know how to check certain things, but I don't know what half of them mean because that's not something that I do on a regular basis. So I try to stay away from HVAC repairs. However, HVAC maintenance is a completely different thing. Foundation work. I do nothing with foundation work. I basically subcontract all foundation aspects, which would be cracks in foundations, all that sealing. I contract a company that I've paired with for a variety of different projects, and they're the ones who take care of that stuff. I don't do anything foundation-wise. They also do downspout extensions. They can do window wells. They do a variety of different things, but that's who I use. I default to them. If a customer comes to me and says, "Here's the problem," and it has to do with the foundation, I immediately get in contact with my person at that company, and then we set up a time to get out there. And I just am kind of like a third-party middleman, kind of. In most cases, the foundation company warranties a lot of their work. Downspout extensions aren't necessarily warranted, but all the foundation work is warranted for a specific time. But that needs to be in the name of the actual homeowner, because otherwise the warranty doesn't necessarily transfer. So because of that, I don't pay for that. I just arrange it, and then on a different situation, I will, obviously, it's just me creating that relationship with the customer. any sort of permit required work. So this would be, anything to do with electrical or plumbing that has to do with digging or going inside the walls or running new wire. I do not do that. Now, when I started, I did not know the specific rules, and I have no problem admitting that there was plenty of times where I would run cable for like a TV mount. They wanted the outlet up on top so they could go wireless. I've seen some hacks out there who just make a hole and they run an extension cord through the wall. I've never done that. Instead, what I would do is I'd run greenfield up the wall from an existing outlet. The problem is that you get into some drywall repairs that have to get done if you're going to do it properly. We don't use Romex here in Illinois, or legally we don't use Romex. There's plenty of people who do, but you're not supposed to. It's supposed to be something that's protected either in greenfield or conduit. And the thing is, if you are properly running it, then you have to open up the drywall in order to connect to the boxes. So ever since I figured out the rules behind it, I haven't done that for years. I try to stay away from that stuff as much as possible because, again, there's no reason to do it if it's not something that I do on a regular basis. I do have an electrician that I loop into certain projects whenever it comes to any sort of electrical work, any sort of specific plumbing work. Specifically with gas, I've had some work that's come in with like gas lines, capping off gas lines, or repairing a leaky pipe or a leaky line that has some sort of leak. I've had a plumber come in and take care of that stuff because I don't want to mess with gas whatsoever. It's not because I have something against gas, but if you mess it up, you're leaking gas. That's not exactly a good thing. And then you're opening up yourself to a major liability if you don't know what you're doing. So I don't do that. Anything requiring a ladder above one story, like I said, I could get it to a story and a half, but for the most part, I stay away from anything that's over one story. I don't do gutter cleanings. I used to do those. That's not because of any other reason other than my insurance can be a heck of a lot cheaper if I'm not going over one story. There is I can go up to, I think, a story and a half. I can't go higher than a story and a half within my insurance, but it just works with what I have. I don't have ladders that can reach to 2 stories. The other side of it is, even if I did have the ladders, I don't have anywhere to store them right now. My personal garage is my shop. What you see here is my shop. So the problem is that I'd have to come up with a way to store these extension ladders, and it's just not worth it. I don't get on roofs that often, so there's not a reason for me to have that type of equipment. Specifically, like I said, with the ladders, it has to do with the insurance too. Once you get over one story, insurance, workman's comp, that stuff goes up pretty high. Now, none of my helpers are allowed on a ladder. The only thing they're allowed on is a step ladder. They're not allowed on any ladders. I don't send them up on ladders because they're not, I don't know the actual requirements by the state, but to be on the safe side, they're not allowed to mess with any of the power tools outside of a drill, or specifically a driver or a drill. They're not allowed to mess with any saws. They're not allowed to be on ladders. I just don't want them to have any sort of issue being the age that they are. A lot of what we do, though, is also, obviously, it goes back to protecting the customer. Referring someone is sometimes the best way not to lose business. And the reason why is because they're still coming to you for the solution. You're just not necessarily making any money. But sending a text here and there, they're still going to come back to you when they have another problem. And when it's a problem you can solve, that is going to keep you that customer. Ultimately, you want the customer to have the best result. The best result is not always you doing the work and you making money. The best result is keeping the customer happy and keeping the customer coming back. The other reason is to protect the business. High-risk jobs require obviously more insurance related things, but also they require a certain level of skill that I myself don't have. Now, if I was to bring somebody on who had an electrical license, we could do more electrical work. I doubt that's going to happen because I can't necessarily pay someone with an electrical license the same amount that if they could get elsewhere to do some of the stuff that we do. But there's a lot of liability that comes with some of these things. Being up on a ladder that's 2 stories up, I'm not a small guy. I'm a bigger guy. I don't want to necessarily be up on a ladder, especially if I'm by myself. The last thing I want is to be up on a ladder by myself. Something happens, the ladder falls, and I'm stuck on the roof, and there's no way for me to get down. Those bigger ladders, the taller ladders, they weigh more. A customer is not going to necessarily be able to pop that thing back up. Now, if you were doing specific work on a regular basis, you were really doing a lot of gutter cleaning, 100%, just figure out the best ways to safely do it so that you remove a lot of that liability or that concern that you have from that risk. The other reason is the warranties. When you do a lot of specific types of specialized work, you have to warranty your work for a certain amount of time. Some of that warranty stuff is outside your control if you're not skilled. Now, if you, let's say, for example, are an HVAC repair person and you go in and you replace a board on a furnace, you know the warranty on that board. You can issue a warranty based off of how long you know that warranty is good for. That said, you're probably not going to be issuing a warranty on something completely unrelated. However, the customer might loop that together when they think of you fixing everything. So that's another reason. Staying focused on what your company does exceptionally well is what makes you strong as a company, and it keeps you protected. The biggest thing is customers remember honesty. That's not true. I've had customers who get upset when I tell them I can't do something. But when I tell them I can't do it, but I can get them somebody who can do it, they don't have any issue with that. If I tell them I'm not skilled enough to take care of that, it's mostly, there's a lot of drywall patches that I get approached on a lot of times. When it's on a wall, 100% I can take care of it. It's on a ceiling, being up on a ladder and then having to try to master it, I just don't do it enough to sit there and say yes. So a lot of times when customers ask me, hey, can you take care of this drywall situation and it's on a ceiling, I'm like, unfortunately I can't, but I can get you the name of somebody who can. And they appreciate that more than anything. Now the name might not pan out. That's why it's great to have a network of reliable contractors that you can rely on that aren't going to blow them off if they contact them. But again, you have to know that just because you're the handyman doesn't mean that you're responsible of taking care of everything. You want to be able to stand behind your work, and you want to be able to stand behind the work of other people that you're referring to do the work as well. So ultimately, every no allows you to say a better yes to the right projects. When you say no to projects that you don't feel comfortable taking on, or there's a higher liability, or there's a concern of whether or not you're actually going to be able to complete the actual repair, when you say no to those, that customer should and typically does come back looking for the yes for the other projects. If you can solve the problem of finding a solution without being the person who does the solution or the repair, that's even better. Defining your business isn't just about what you offer, it's also about what you intentionally choose not to do. I have purposefully gone out of my way to ensure that I don't take on certain things. At this point, I have an AI receptionist. They have a specific list of things where if someone calls and says, do you take care of this? I don't. And it will tell them flat out, but if you have something else, we can take care of it, but that is not something we do. Set expectations early. I get a lot of customers. This isn't necessarily related to any of the harder or high liability stuff, but for some reason, I put in my Google listing years and years ago when I started that I did fence repair. And the fence repair that I did was come in, replace a couple rails, a couple pickets, occasionally a fence post, things like that. There has been so many storms in my area over the past couple months that fences all over the place are completely destroyed. I get a lot of calls where people are asking for full fence replacements. I don't do full fence replacements. I don't even do small fence replacements because there's a problem with trying to match things up. I'm not the right person to come in and replace 20 feet of a 100-foot fence and try to make sure that it's exactly the way it's supposed to be. I'm not familiar with all the different types of materials to ensure that they're getting exactly what they want. So those are things just to keep in mind, is that just because somebody wants you to do it doesn't mean that is something that you need to do. A good customer is always going to respect a no, and a bad customer is only going to only ever expect a yes. So just remember that. So with all that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for other videos. Check out our videos on Monday for This Week in the Field, where I talk about all the different things that happen within the business, including the revenue that comes in. In addition to that, leave comments, like the video, share it with other tradespeople or other handymen that you think that might get something out of it. I appreciate all the subscribers. We've recently surpassed 200. Greatly appreciate that, and all of the people who are checking out the videos. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comment section. If you'd like me to focus on a specific topic in the future, something that you'd like my perspective on, be sure to leave those ideas in the comment section as well. With all of that being said, thank you so much for watching the latest Handyman in the Field. I've been Dustin, and we'll see you guys next time.